a small primary school at the heart of its community. The shocking death of the much-loved head teacher, unleashing a national debate.
I don't have any reason to doubt the inspection.
I cannot tell you the number of head teachers that have had nervous breakdowns.
I think Ofsted has been a force for good in the education system in England. I think the time has now come for a change.
Hand in your badges. Ofsted must be reformed.
Ruth Perry was 53 when she took her life on the 8th of January 2023. A primary head teacher waiting for an inspection report that would label her school failing. Ruth was also a wife and mother to 2 teenage girls, a lifelong friend to her older sister Julia Waters. Throughout 2023, we followed Julia as she's campaigned for change, and we followed the wider debate provoked by her sister's death. Has the cost of school inspection become too high?
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Tuesday the 21st of March.
The family of the head teacher Ruth Perry, who took her own life after an Ofsted inspection at her school, have called the system punitive.
Ruth Perry died in January after working at Caversham Primary School for 13 years. It was downgraded from outstanding to inadequate.
There's always been debate about how Ofsted does its job and the pressures that creates within schools. When news broke of the suicide of a primary head teacher, it opened up a national debate. So who was Ruth Perry? Caversham was where Ruth Perry had grown up, going to the primary school with her older sister Julia. She'd returned to work there, becoming head teacher. To her family and friends, Ruth had been happily woven into the community for the rest of her life.
Being Ruth, she was fun, she was carefree, we could talk easily for hours, and she was just passionate about everything she did.
But she was also down to earth. She wasn't brash. There was nothing, she was just very natural, very honest.
She had a wicked sense of humour, a really nice laugh, nice ready laugh and smile. But she was sort of quietly confident as a person.
Hello everyone, Mrs. Perry here. Welcome to my final assembly of this term, which has been a really strange term, with most of you working from home.
Through the lockdowns, when children were at home, Ruth Perry's online school assemblies were full of hope and kindness.
And I hope that most of you, if not all of you, actually miss school and seeing the teachers and me. We certainly miss you.
This has had a huge impact on your family.
Yes, yeah. The future's very different.
I still think I see her.
I want her to be remembered by her daughters as the lovely mum she was. And she was just a lovely human being, and destroyed by an utterly inhumane system.
Caversham Primary School was judged outstanding in 2009, so for many years it wasn't inspected. What we know now is that Ruth Perry volunteered in 2019 to help Ofsted test new inspection standards. After their visit, she wrote to parents in a newsletter telling them the feedback was glowing.
At no point did she rest on that. You still think, I still need to do, you always know, you have a long to-do list all the time that you just want to improve your school. She knew that,
but she did get confidence from that pilot, definitely.
3 years later, in mid-November 2022, the phone call came from Ofsted to say a full inspection would be carried out.
The first day of inspection, I had emailed her to check how she was. I think I'd WhatsApped her as well. How's it going? That's what we had to do. As soon as you hear Ofsted or in someone's school, you check on them, because you know that whatever the standards in the school are like, you worry about the process. It's a stressful process.
I sent her an email of good luck and saying, you'll be absolutely fantastic at this. You know your school and you're such a fantastic leader. And then I was talking to her, I was emailing her on that first day, and I got silence.
Friends and family say by the end of the 2 days of inspection, Ruth was visibly devastated. Her sister Julia saw her that evening.
She just looked different. She was really pale, her shoulders were slumped. She couldn't smile. She tried to at first, but she just couldn't smile. She walked into the kitchen and she just went, I'm broken, and started to cry. So I gave her a hug, and she was just, she just felt so vulnerable. She was, just leant into me and cried. And it was like there was nothing I could do to comfort her. I've never seen her like that.
The inspectors had raised concerns about how the school managed keeping children safe, how records were kept and staff checked. We now know no child had come to any harm at the school. Ruth Perry knew if Ofsted found flaws in safeguarding, it meant the school automatically got the bottom grade. On the 8th of December, Ruth Perry and a handful of others at the school saw the draft inspection report with the inadequate grade. It came with a strict warning across the top. The draft results could not be shared until Ofsted published the final report.
She wasn't allowed to open up to those closest to her and share the pain that she was in, and she was clearly in a lot of pain. And I remember when I opened the door, she looked broken.
These are notes that Ruth had written after the Ofsted inspection and that I found in her bags in her house. And she said, I've walked with teacher friends who understand, though I can't share the inadequate judgment even with them. I wake from restless sleep, absolutely panic-stricken. 40 days are taking their toll on my skin and my nails. My stomach is wasting away.
Several of the notes went over and over how to explain to parents that this outstanding school was now judged inadequate by Ofsted.
I have Googled, what do heads do after a failed inspection? I have seen examples of suicides, forced removal, resignation in shame.
An inadequate judgment would mean the school becoming an academy. Ruth Perry thought she would lose her job and her standing in the community.
She didn't feel that she could walk around the community anymore. She didn't feel that she could show her face because she'd let everyone down. And how could she possibly walk around Caversham after that?
This was going to be the end of her career. And she didn't know what else she could do. This is what she loved. I don't think she could hold her head up high. I think she was so distraught by it.
By the weekend after the inspection, Ruth's husband John said she was tearful, terrified the community in Caversham would be angry with her. She thought the family would have to move away. In his statement read at the inquest, John said that she started to think about suicide. Ruth Perry had no previous history of mental ill health. Over the following weeks, she saw her GP and a mental health crisis team. John said as time went on, her despair became worse.
She's written on Christmas morning. It says, "It's Christmas morning and I've been awake since 2:15 a.m. Luckily, the girls didn't get up early, so I could rest, even though my mind would not allow me to sleep. INADEQUATE. Inadequate keeps flashing behind my eyes." I mean, the last time I saw Ruth alive was on Christmas Day. Oh, poor Ruth. She was she was really trying. She didn't want to spoil our Christmas. She didn't want to spoil the children's Christmas. But she was just haunted by it. You could see it all the time.
Caversham Primary School reopened on the 4th of January. Ruth Perry knew the report could be published at any time. Early on the morning of Sunday the 8th, she took her own life. Ofsted published the report with the inadequate grade in March. Soon after, Julia raised concerns. Other head teachers had begun getting in touch with her. She started calling for school inspections to change.
I find it callous, heartless, insensitive, tone deaf, and these aren't just the terms that I've been using, to just pretend that things are okay.
There is a danger here that so, Matt, there's your first guest on camera 5 as well.
Ofsted responded with an interview a month after the family first raised concerns.
We have the most profound sympathy for her family and for all the Caversham school community.
But do you think that the inspection came to the right conclusion?
I do. I think the findings were secure, and I think the inspection team worked with the professionalism and sensitivity that I would expect from our inspectors.
By any other measure, Ruth was an exceptional, inspirational, highly regarded school leader. Yet, in an interview last week, Amanda Spielman stated that the inadequate Ofsted judgment of Caversham Primary School was sound. Stand up for Ruth. Stand up for yourselves and each other. Ofsted must be reformed. Thank you. It's over 4 months. It's 4.5 months since Ruth took her own life. It's about 2.5 months now since I first spoke out about it.
In May, Julia Waters was invited to meet the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, for the first time.
Ofsted requires accountability, transparency, scrutiny of schools, but has not been reviewed since it was set up. I cannot see how they can defend that. I mean, I'm really hoping that they will listen and they will act so that I can try to rebuild my life and do what I should be doing now, grieving my sister and being with my family.
She took with her a Caversham primary parent, Ed, and a local primary head teacher, Lisa.
Well, I was saying to Lisa, it's more than a quarter of my life I've known her. More than a quarter of my life. She's looked after my children.
The meeting was about bigger change.
Oh, it's over. No, it's over there, isn't it? Yeah.
The government oversees the one-word judgment of schools and intervenes to change who runs a school judged inadequate.
How was the meeting, Minister?
It was very constructive.
Well, we've been in there 3 hours. Yeah, I think it went well. Gillian Keegan genuinely was listening. I did say in no uncertain terms that if we're not satisfied, if the action isn't forthcoming and fast enough, that I will keep going and pushing for those changes that are needed.
For Julia, Lisa and Ed, this wouldn't be their last journey to Westminster. As Julia spoke out, so did head teachers. They got in touch with her and with the BBC. This head teacher wrote to us describing the experience as brutal. She told us she was broken. It was 2 days that changed her entire career. She was signed off work, experiencing regular panic attacks. But what really struck me was the last line of her letter to us. I wanted to run away from my life because I couldn't handle the shame of this report. Others had even darker thoughts.
I had considered suicide. I had planned how I would end my life and thought about that and have not shared that with anybody.
I've never ever been judged as anything but good or better in every single role of my life. So it felt like it was a personal affront to me. It was just this deep, deep despair. And at that point, I decided I was going to kill myself. Another school improvement advisor for me, I've called him up and I think he saved my life.
This head teacher, like many others, signed a non-disclosure agreement in order to have a financial payoff so he could support his family. These confidentiality deals make it very hard to know the true number of head teachers who've left in this way.
It's a dirty little secret. I think it's pretty sordid, to be fair. I had no choice.
Suicide is complicated. We might never fully understand the many reasons why one person makes that decision. But when you think about suicide prevention, researchers look for the factors and the circumstances that might make people vulnerable. So I wanted to understand more. How can someone who's highly resilient, successful, well respected in their community get to the point of having those thoughts?
For someone whose sense of self-worth and investment is in their job, that crises can happen when something happens in work.
Professor Anne John is one of the UK's leading researchers into suicide prevention.
When you're thinking about being humiliated in front of lots of people you know, say a community that you're invested in, when there's nothing you can do about that humiliation, then what happens can be a sense of entrapment. And when you think of a lot of the models that we have about how people move from sort of thoughts of suicide to suicidal behaviours, entrapment, shame and humiliation are quite important along that pathway.
Everyone thinking, what's the value of this?
Schools have always been inspected. Thousands are carried out each year without incident to check on standards and inform parents.
Come through, please.
Upall Primary School in East London has almost 1,000 pupils. Last year, Ofsted graded it requires improvement for a second time.
That will be our main reception, and then we have our 4-year-olds who are just starting, as you can see. Just popping in to say hello to our wonderful children. Hi. You okay?
Inspectors raised concerns that not all subjects were taught well. When we visited, it was waiting for a follow-up visit.
Do you know what? I think we've had a bit of a summary, haven't we, here? Do you reckon?
A few weeks into the new school year, there's a staff meeting.
We're waiting on that phone call, and really what I wanted us to focus on in this first 4 weeks is the systems.
Working through Ofsted's concerns.
Practice giving feedback in relation to your subject.
If inspectors decide not enough change has happened, the school could be made into an academy. That often means the head teacher loses their job.
So the implication for the school to be judged requires improvement for the second time is immense. And that pressure, stress, worry sits with you all day long, all night long, all weekend, all week. Did the dad come in who's got the 2 children? So to feel that you're going to be taken away from a community that you've invested so much in, staff, parents, children, there was a real sense of, I don't know, loss of control. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? So you've got no certainty. So you just go day by day. So let's just go through what were some of the strategies we agreed at the beginning of last year to improve writing outcomes at greater depth.
In appraisals with each teacher, he looks at what Ofsted expects and what progress the school is making.
That focus within this current Ofsted framework, know more, remember more. And sometimes the challenge is this is a child who might only have joined last week or has missed patches of their learning, but it's the judging the quality of the teaching through the amount of knowledge that the students have retained.
20 new children have just started at the school. the daily challenges of one of the biggest primary schools in the country still have to be managed.
Is it possible you could come and speak to the parent, please?
As an experienced head, Dr. Atwell has been through many Ofsted inspections. He has led schools graded outstanding and struggles to make sense of the grade given to his current school.
A calm, purposeful atmosphere is evident in all lessons, and when pupils are moving around the school, they have a positive attitude towards learning. Routines are well established. As a result, pupils know what is expected and they rise to that. Does that read to you as a school that's requiring improvement?
More recently, he's been involved in a union-funded review of inspection.
Hi, afternoon. Yeah, have a good evening. See you tomorrow.
By June 2023, Ofsted said some things would change. Schools judged inadequate on keeping children safe would be re-inspected within 3 months to give them a chance to improve. The next day, MPs announced an inquiry into Ofsted's work with schools. In November, the MP's inquiry drew Julia back to Westminster for the last evidence session.
We're here for the Education Select Committee public hearing.
May I see your invitations, please?
It's a member of the public.
It was just weeks before this separate inquest into Ruth's death. The Chief Inspector was giving evidence.
A lot of people clearly do dislike or resent the fact that a poor inspection judgment can lead to a change of control for a school.
MPs have heard about Ofsted's importance to parents and the impact on schools.
Hello. Hi, good to meet you.
Sir Michael Wilshaw was a head teacher, then became the Chief Inspector running Ofsted. He strongly supports school inspection for England's schools, but now fears trust in it has been damaged.
The judgments have to be secure, have to be consistent, and have to be made by the right people. If that doesn't happen, and those one-word or two-word judgments are wrong and can lead to good people losing faith in the system and losing their jobs, and that's a real concern.
Under scrutiny are the one or two-word judgments summing up a school, meant to be clear for parents.
I was a strong supporter of those single-word judgments for many, many years. I think the time has now come for a change.
He wants other changes too, but most of all for Ofsted to rebuild trust.
If it doesn't listen to the profession, and if it doesn't listen to head teachers who want to do the best by their children and want inspection to be part of that process of improving children's lives, then Ofsted will fall into disarray.
Good afternoon.
So who are the inspectors?
Afternoon, everyone. We all okay?
Many head teachers also inspect.
You're right, Harry. Where are you off to?
Martin Hanbury was one of them. He runs a school for children with special educational needs.
I think it's really important that schools are supported in improvement, and I don't mean in a fluffy, wishy-washy way. I mean with challenge, I mean with rigour, and you will find that the vast majority of school leaders, the vast majority of teachers want that challenge.
But he gave up inspecting this year.
I gradually became more and more disillusioned with the process. I felt that Ofsted hadn't adjusted its sites following COVID. I don't think they were taking enough account of the way that schools had changed massively, and the context in which schools were operating had fundamentally altered.
Ofsted has recently acknowledged schools are facing extra pressures. When Ruth Perry's death became public, head teachers felt Ofsted wasn't listening enough.
It wasn't picking up both what it should be doing morally in its response, but also how much it had affected so many of Ruth's colleagues that were known to her, and then so many other head teachers who were saying perhaps themselves there, but for the grace of God go I.
Another regulator has faced a similar challenge over suicide risk. The General Medical Council can prevent a doctor from ever working again if there are serious concerns. 8 years ago, it paid for an independent review that led to changes at every step of its processes.
So we're starting from the premise of trying to be a compassionate regulator, so recognising that there's a human being at the other end of the process.
Staff were given training on dealing with vulnerable doctors. The language used was changed.
We're here to keep patients safe. We're here to maintain public confidence in doctors. So it's absolutely crucial that we get that right. And this is not about a watering down of standards. Often we're talking about very serious allegations that have to be treated with the right level of care and consideration. But we do understand that there is a doctor who is likely to be feeling very vulnerable or very anxious about what's going to happen going through the process. And so because of that, we recognise that there are things we could probably do to mitigate that for them.
While mental health is more widely talked about at work, suicide risk remains a taboo. Experts say that should change. We need to be brave enough to ask difficult questions.
So often people feel like if they ask directly, are you thinking about taking your own life, that might make, plant the idea. There's no evidence for that. It's a myth. And I think just being able to ask and have those conversations in a non-judgmental way is really important in the workplace.
Back in Reading, the inquest into Ruth's death heard detailed accounts from Ofsted inspectors and staff at Caversham Primary. After 5 days of evidence, the findings were delivered. Today, the coroner was really clear in her verdict. She said the Ofsted inspection carried out in November 2022 had contributed to Ruth Perry taking her own life. The fact she couldn't share the grade with anyone else, the long wait for the report to be published, had also made things worse. The coroner went on to say that the inspection lacked fairness, respect and sensitivity, and at times was rude and intimidating. Afterwards, Julia, surrounded by family and friends, gave their response to the verdict.
Ruth was a head teacher and also a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a dear friend to so many people. Her death has left an unfillable hole in all our lives. Ofsted likes to judge people with single-word labels. We could judge the current Ofsted system with our own labels: callous, perverse, inhumane. We have no confidence that Ofsted, under its current leadership and management, is either willing or able to make the widespread root and branch reforms to its systems and culture that are so urgently needed.
In a statement, Ofsted's Chief Inspector, Amanda Spielman, responded to the verdict, saying, "Ruth Perry's death was a tragedy that deeply affected many people. My thoughts remain with her family, the wider Caversham School community, and everyone else who knew and loved her. On behalf of Ofsted, I would like to say sorry to them for the distress that Mrs. Perry undoubtedly experienced as a result of our inspection. After Mrs. Perry's death, we made changes to the way we work to help reduce the pressure felt by school leaders. We will do more." The coroner highlighted a number of areas of concern. "We will work hard to address each of these as soon as we can, and we are starting that work straight away."
I want her to be remembered for the head teacher she'd been of that school for 12 years before her death, for all those happy, safe childhoods that she sort of nurtured and supported through school.
Hello everyone. If you plant hard work, you will reap success. If you plant honesty, you will reap trust. If you plant perseverance, so not giving up, you will reap contentment.
Something that Ruth often said: it's more important to be kind than to be right. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other, and that's how we'll get through it.
If you or someone you know has been affected by this story, help and support is available. Visit bbc.co.uk/actionline for more information. you.